Hello and welcome to today's video. I had this request on my YouTube channel recently. I forgot to check who suggested this, but one of my lovely viewers suggested that I record a video talking a bit about myself, what my background is, how I came to England, bit about my family, things like that. So I thought that was a good idea. So if you fancy learning more about me, who I am and how I've ended up where I am today, please carry on watching this video. If you are new here, my name is Anniken. I design knitting patterns, I teach knitting workshops online and in person, and I sell yarn through my website YarnAddict.co.uk. You can find all the links to all my social media and how to sign up for my newsletter, my website, all that kind of stuff below this video if you just click, I think it says show more. Probably easier on your phone or tablet than if you're watching this on your telly. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and let's get started. So I am originally from Norway, where you may hear I've got an accent. Some people pick up my accent straight away and immediately ask me where I'm from, and some people are surprised when I say I'm foreign. But I am from Norway. I was born and brought up in Norway, in a small town just south of Oslo and just north of the town of Moss, if you're familiar with the area south of Oslo. All my family's from Oslo. Well, my parents both born and raised in Oslo. My grandparents came from different parts of Norway. My four grandparents came from Gudbrandsdalen, which is one of the valleys north of Lillehammer in Norway. One of my grandfathers came from Voss, which is on the west coast, not too far from Bergen. Beautiful place. So it's Gudbrandsdalen. One of my other grandmother came from Telemark, which is where they had the heavy water thing during World War II. Beautiful area as well. And my second grandfather is from Oslo. So my family always travelled a lot. We always went abroad on holiday a lot. My parents liked travelling. My dad travelled a lot for his work, and sometimes my mum would go with him. And we also had holidays abroad almost every single year for as long as I can remember. When I used to go to Denmark quite a lot, loved Denmark. We used to stay on this farm, which was really lovely. Sometimes we go with my grandparents, sometimes we go with my aunt and my uncle and my cousins. I grew up with a sister. She was 3 years younger than me. This is a little bit difficult, and I'm getting a little bit emotional. My sister passed away just over 3 years ago from cancer. She was 48. She was diagnosed about a year before the pandemic started in Europe, and I just assumed that the treatment would work. Unfortunately, it didn't. About a week, 10 days before we went into our first lockdown here in the UK, I had a phone call from my parents saying that the cancer was terminal. And in June 2020, I had a phone call from my parents saying that my sister was in hospital and she'd been given days left to live. So we immediately started looking for flights. At that point, there were very few flights available. So my husband and I left a few days later. We had to fly via Paris because there were no direct flights to Oslo. And then we had a quarantine for 10 days, which we did in an Airbnb in Oslo. And my sister actually passed away the first night we were there, so I didn't get to see her. So the last time I saw her was Christmas 2018. So yeah, very, very sad. But life has to go on, unfortunately. So apologies for getting a little bit emotional talking about that. So I grew up with a sister. We did travel a lot. When I was a kid, we used to go abroad on holidays a lot, so I always loved travelling. We mostly travelled in, well, we only travelled in Europe. We used to go to Portugal, went to Portugal several times. My grandparents took me to Spain, and we went to Italy, France, Germany. We used to always go on driving holidays, so we always drove down, like driving from Norway to north of Portugal. So you then obviously drive through a lot of countries, and then we'd stop somewhere in the south of France or something. So we used to have fantastic holidays. I was really, really grateful. We probably only had like couple of holidays in Norway as a child. We always used to go abroad on holiday, so I appreciate that I was very, very privileged and very, very lucky. But it did kind of instill a love of travel in me, and I probably grew up a little bit spoiled because of that, because I was used to always going abroad on holiday. And when I was 13, I think, a British couple opened up riding stables near where I lived. There wasn't stables near where I lived, but they were privately stables, where like livery stables where people kept their own horses. And then this couple rented it and opened their riding stables. So I started going there for riding lessons, and I very quickly got bitten by the riding bug, and I was there as much as I could, come home from school, and I go straight to the stables. Luckily in Norway, school days are much shorter than they are here. We lived in the same area from when I started, well, before I started school, and I went to school with the same people from when I started school till I left school at 16. I was quite shy as a child, not very confident, but I always loved traveling. And when we started secondary school, we used to get these brochures every year from companies organising language holidays in the UK, which was very popular at the time. 3 weeks language holiday in one of the south coast towns like Bournemouth, Brighton, most Eastbourne, Torquay probably, quite a few of the south coast towns for 3 weeks. And I thought, well, that sounds like fun. But they also had these brochures for an exchange year in the States. I think the first time I got a brochure was just the US, and then I think they started adding in European countries as well, and Australia. I wasn't interested in European countries because I was taking German at secondary school. My German wasn't good enough, but I was very interested in the States. My English was better. So I started nagging my parents to go to the States, and they kept saying no, 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 no. And then eventually they agreed for me to go on the 3-week language holiday to England, to Bournemouth. I think it was the kind of as a consolation for not allowing me to go to the States. So I went to Bournemouth for 3 weeks, loved it. None of my friends wanted to go, so I went on my own, which I'm amazed I had the confidence to do. I stayed in a family with a family, and we had a little girl, toddler, and there was another girl from a different part of Norway who was also traveling on their own, so we were placed together. So we kind of hung out for the 3 weeks. Absolutely loved it. Language holidays, language lessons in the morning, and then we could just do what we wanted in the afternoon. So we were just running around Bournemouth. I'd been to Bournemouth once before, when I was 13. I was 16, I think, when I went on this language holiday, 15 and 16. I'd been to Bournemouth a few years before when I was 13. I used to play baritone horn in a marching band. All my friends played, most of my friends played in the marching band. My 2 best friends played the cornet. One of my friends played clarinet, one played flute. I got the baritone horn, which is quite big. And our first trip with the band was to Bournemouth when we were 13. So the 3 of us, 13-year-olds with limited English, running around Bournemouth on our own. Loved it, but I would not have been happy for my kids to run around Bournemouth on their own at 13. Anyway, so that was that. Eventually my parents said yes to me going to the States because of the time of year I'm born. I could actually go the school year I turned 18. My birthday is in August, and I left for the States the day before I turned 18. If my birthday had been earlier in the year, that would have been too late. You don't get a choice where you go. You can state a preference. And obviously all Norwegian kids, most Norwegian teenagers want to go to California or Florida because that's the place we've heard of. I was placed in Colorado, and I was actually working. The year before I went to the States, I was working during the summer holidays and other school holidays, and Saturdays I was working in the biggest department store in Oslo called Sten and Strøm, in their ice cream parlor in their restaurant. And I was actually working, my parents were coming into Oslo, and the letter had arrived saying where my placement was going to be when I went to the States. So they brought it in, so I opened it at work. And I was placed in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I was like, I'm not even sure I don't know where Colorado is. The family I stayed with, they had 2 sons who'd left home and a daughter who was 13. So I was 18 at the time. She was 13. We got on really, really well. I absolutely loved my year there. I went to an American high school. Absolutely loved it. Brilliant. So glad I did. Now, as an adult, I don't know how I had the confidence to go because I was not a very confident teenager, but I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved my year in the States. It was brilliant. I got to travel to the family I stayed with had a cottage or cabin, big cabin, probably like 5 bedrooms or something, that they owned with some family members in the mountains of Colorado. So we went there quite a lot. They had family in Denver, so we went there quite regularly. My parents came to visit me, and we went to Florida, went to Miami and Orlando, went to Disney World. And then at the end of the year, I went on this exchange trip. They organized the trip for exchange students at the end of the year. And it started in Iowa, I think, and then it went to Wyoming, down to Colorado. It picked up people as they went along. So they stopped in Colorado Springs, so picked up me and I think somebody else. And then we went down to New Mexico, Arizona, went to Grand Canyon, went to Santa Fe, went to Las Vegas, Nevada, went to LA, went to Universal Studios, I think it was. Drove up the coast, stopped somewhere along the Californian coast, can't remember where. Went to San Francisco, then we drove to the Hoover Dam, I think. Yellowstone National Park, and then back down to, we got dropped off somewhere. No, I think they dropped us off at the coach station in Denver, and then we had to wait there in the middle of the night for a few hours for like a regular, is it Greyhound coaches they call, whatever they call the regular coaches, to back down to Colorado Springs. And absolutely amazing. I love that year. Brilliant. Really, really good. I've only been to the States once since, and that was when my sister-in-law lived in Maryland. We went for 3 weeks, I think, to Maryland and Washington DC. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Would love to go back. Absolutely brilliant. After I came back from the States, I had 1 year left of school to finish to do my like Norwegian equivalent A-levels. So I did that. It became clear that I had chosen business studies with marketing and finance. It became very clear after the first year, which was like a general business study thing. And then I chose to specialize in marketing and finance. It was the late 80s. That's what everyone wanted to do. It became very clear that that was completely the wrong subject for me. So the last year of school, I did really, really badly. I failed a couple of subjects. I hated it. It was the wrong subjects for me, and I couldn't wait to leave. When I finished school, while I was in the States, the couple who ran the local riding stables where I lived, where I was very, very regular, they'd moved to back to the UK. So when I came back from the States, I had to finish school, so I did that for a year. And then I was just itching to go abroad again, desperate to go abroad again. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wanted to work in the travel industry, be a travel agent, something like that, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I arranged to come to Cornwall for 2 months in the summer after I finished my equivalent of A-levels, and to work at this riding stable. So this couple I used to know in Norway ran. So I came over for 2 months so that would have been 1989, July and August. I'm pretty sure we didn't have a drop of rain. It was beautiful, sunny, warm, heat wave, amazing. I loved it. We had kids coming there, mostly from Norway, and riding holidays, teenagers. And we used to take them, riding lessons in the morning, hacking on the moors in the afternoon. We were right on the edge of Bodmin Moor. Because it was so hot, they would have a lesson in the morning. Then we would take them to a beach on the north coast in the afternoon, or up to an area on the moors called Gold Diggings, which is a big old quarry filled with water, and it's very, very deep, and we used to go swimming there. And then we go out hacking on the moors in the evening because it was too hot to ride in the afternoon some weeks. Absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. I decided I would go back to the States. I rang the couple I worked for here in Cornwall the summer before and said, can I come back? I knew they had people there who were training to become British Horse Society riding instructors. So I said, can I come and do that? And because they knew me and I was quite good at teaching. I was quite good with horses. I had a bit of talent. I was quite bright. They knew me. They know me since I was 13. They knew my parents. So they said yes. They offered me a job as a working pupil. Basically, I was there officially as a student, and I didn't get paid, but I was taking British Horse Society exams At the time, to become British Horse Society assistant riding instructor, you had to take stage 1 and stage 2, I think it was called, which I passed quite quickly. Then I had to do a teaching exam, which I also passed, and then I had to do a stage 3, which is quite a high standard, and I never got through that because they didn't have the horses to train to that level. And actually, when I'd been here for like 6 months or so, I was feeling really fed up, and I was reading through Horse and Hound one day, and I saw this job advertised in the Algarve in Portugal. So I went down to the village and rang up from the phone box in the village and had the phone interview with this British woman who ran riding stables on the Algarve in Portugal. I'd been to the Algarve on holiday a few years before, and I was offered a job. So I told the couple I was working for that I was leaving, that I was going to Portugal. My parents asked me if I could come home, and I said no, I want to go to Portugal. So they said okay. So I packed up my bags. I booked a 2-week return flight to Portugal. It was like a charter flight, but obviously my intention was not to use the return flight. So I went, I got there. I was a little bit shocked because the standards there were not what I was used to. It was like a trekking place. So kids who were on there, people who were there on holiday were booking to go trekking. So, and you have people who've never ridden before going trekking, which I wasn't used to, because where I work, we wouldn't let people go trekking up on the moors unless they were could ride. If people turned up and said they could ride and we realized they couldn't, we would offer them a lesson instead. And there were a lot of things I didn't like about it. There were some things I did. It was kind of in the middle of nowhere, difficult to get anywhere. I basically stayed there for 2 weeks, and I realized it was the wrong decision, and I'd made the wrong decision. So I wanted to come back to, I thought I will eat humble pie, ring them and say, can I come back? My parents say, can you please go home, repeat the final year of school so you pass and go to university? And I said, no, I want to go back to Cornwall. So I went back to Cornwall, and a couple of months later, I met my husband. So I'm glad I went back to Cornwall. A couple of months later, or probably a month or so later, this young guy, local guy, who was coming for riding lessons, he seemed quite nice. I took him out hacking once or twice, taught him in the school several times, and then after his lesson one day, he said, do you fancy going out for a drink? And I said, yeah, why not? So we went out for a drink, and a year later we got married, and we are still married, and we've been married for 32 years now. So yes, definitely the right decision to come back here from Portugal. I came back, got married, decided I couldn't carry on working with horses because it basically pays no money. So I quit, and I went back to Norway to prepare for the wedding. We got married in Norway, came back, moved to Plymouth in Devon in southwest of England. It was a recession. I was trying to find a job, really struggling. I got a job at a local department store for Christmas in the coffee shop, which I hated. And then after Christmas, I really hated where we were living in Plymouth, so we decided to move to Liskeard. Managed to find a 2-bedroom flat to rent, and I just got a job at the supermarket chain Asda, and I worked there for about a month. We moved to Liskeard, and then I got a job in Liskeard at a photo processing place. I worked there for nearly a year altogether. Then I got a job at a hotel in nearby Lou, and the first day I was told by the person I was replacing that she was leaving because they weren't guaranteed to get paid. So I worked there for a few weeks, and then the hotel went into receivership. It actually meant we were guaranteed to get paid, so actually things improved once we went into receivership. But I was worried that this wasn't a long-term place, so I immediately started looking for other jobs, and I eventually got a job for the local council in the town where I live, and I worked there for a few years. Part-time. I had 2 kids, and then after my second daughter was born, she was about 18 months, I think, 20 months, I had a car accident. I'd had a car accident as a teenager where I hurt my neck. I had another car accident, and I was in a lot of severe pain with neck pain for the next like 24 hours. Went to see the doctor, basically told, given a sick note. I was on sick leave for like 6 months, and I went on to disability benefits for a number of years. And then as my kids were coming towards the end of primary school, I was getting really bored, very depressed, very fed up. Started knitting again. Wondered whether I could turn this into some kind of job. I eventually was asked to teach. I started designing, and I came off disability benefits, and I've been doing this ever since. All my opportunities to start with were kind of accidental. So I started designing just because I didn't like following other people's patterns. And then I met somebody, I submitted some patterns to an online British website at the time called Magnets, I think. And they published a couple of my patterns, and then the lady who ran that started a print magazine. So she said, can I publish some of your patterns in my print magazine? I said yes. That then made me feel like I was a proper designer because I've been published in magazines. I met somebody local who was a designer who was designing for Let's Knit and Knitting magazine at the time. And she'd written books for the same publisher that publishes Knitting magazine. So she put me in touch with some editors. So I got published in Knitting magazine, and Let's Knit became a regular contributor for Let's Knit. And then when the Knitter started, I contacted them, and I had patterns published in the Knitter and occasionally Simply Knitting. I got to know this lady through an online knitting forum who was starting a yarn shop in Bovey Tracy in Devon, an hour from where I live. So as soon as she opened Spinny Yarn, I was there because it was the nearest yarn shop. It was amazing. It was the best yarn shop I'd seen in this country. We had great yarn shops in Norway, but the local offerings there were quite disappointing at the time. And then she started running workshops, and she wanted to do a sock workshop, and she said, you knit a lot of socks. Do you fancy teaching a sock knitting workshop? So I was like, yeah. I used to teach horse riding. I can do socks. And then people kept commenting on the way I was knitting continental style. So I said to her, shall I do a continental workshop maybe? And she said, yes, great. And then it just spiraled from there. I started doing lace knitting. So I started teaching lace knitting workshops. After other people started reaching out to me and asking me to teach, so I started teaching other places. I got contacted by a publisher in the States saying they were looking for someone. She'd seen my pattern on the front of one of the American magazines, on the cover of one of the American magazines, and was I interested in writing a book on lace knitting. So I said yes, I was. So I submitted a proposal to them and got commissioned to do a book, and I got introduced to Debbie Bliss through this yarn shop in Bovey Tracy, Spinny Yarn. She came there to do a fashion show. The owner of the yarn shop at the time, who's now retired, introduced me to Debbie. And Debbie, I was thinking, how can I mention to Debbie that I'm a freelancer, and does she use freelance designers? So within not that long, probably less than half an hour of meeting Debbie Bliss, she said, do you do freelance work? And I said yes. And then she commissioned me to design for her magazine. At the time she had a magazine which was very popular in the States. It had an American publisher, so it was huge in the States. So I designed a shawl for her which went on the cover of her magazine. Then I did design a few other things as well. I think a skirt, some tops, maybe another shawl, I can't remember. But the first shawl, which was like a white snowflake shawl, was on the cover of her magazine, which went out to all her stockists in the US. So that was quite a big deal for me. And then the rest is history. It's just grown and grown and grown. So a lot of my earlier things in knitting were kind of as a result of somebody approaching me and me saying yes. I always had the thing that I would say yes to everything if I could physically do it. Things have just grown since. The person who asked me to do this video, this video is way longer than I expected it to be. The person who asked me to do this video also asked me if I could talk about what my daughters do. Because my daughters are now 25 and 28, there are still some pictures of them on my patterns because they used to do a bit of modelling for me. I haven't asked them if I can talk about what they do. I don't think they want me to go into a lot of details about what they do, but they're now 25 and 28. They live in South Wales. One is still a student. She's got a year left. She's studying medicine. I think I'm allowed to say that. The other one works as a statistician. I think that's all I'll say about her, because I think she's a bit more private about her job. So they're incredibly bright, incredibly talented. I'm very, very proud of them. They've done amazing. Don't know where they get their brains from. It's not from me. I mean, my sister was a doctor. So, and my sister-in-law is a maths teacher, so there's bright people in our family. My husband's got a degree. He did quite a good job as a software engineer. My dad had a very good job he did a chemical engineering degree. It's just me who didn't do anything. I probably have the brains to go to university. I just didn't know what I wanted to do, so I never went. Anyway, I think that's made this video quite long enough. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of this kind of video, me just rambling on about me. But it was also a response to a question. So Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.